PMQs, Unpacked on Times Radio.
Order. I call Matt Chorley and Tim Shipman.
Yes, here we are again. It's that time of the week. Tim Shipman, the chief political commentator of the Sunday Times, is here. Hello, Tim.
Hello.
What do you think Keir Starmer might want to ask Boris Johnson about today?
I'm going to give you the whole of PMQs. Keir Starmer's going to say, you caved in on sleaze because of me. And Boris Johnson's going to reply, but my stuff goes further than yours. And Keir Starmer's going to say, but it's very non-specific and the devil's in the detail and you won't tell us the detail. And in half an hour's time...
we will be proved right. Does it matter politically? Has Boris Johnson taken the sting out of Keir Starmer's attack? Or can Keir Starmer take some credit for bouncing Boris Johnson into it?
He can certainly try to take some credit, and he probably is due some credit, but it's always slightly less charged when the bloke's already caved in. What Starmer should probably try to do is seek some divisions between Boris Johnson and the people sitting behind him, who are none too happy about Boris Johnson, caving into the left. There was a great quote in one of the papers this morning that said he's gone from circling the wagons to throwing us to the Indians.
Wowzers. And actually, it's not just that there's divisions between Boris Johnson and those behind him. There's divisions amongst those behind him too.
Exactly, yes. So all the sort of 2019 intake, the 2017 intake, the newer MPs, particularly those in the north, for whom an MP's salary of 82 grand is considered a pretty princely sum. And then a lot of the old guard, the people who tried to get Boris Johnson to back Owen Paterson, to change the rules, to stitch it all up. Some of those, of course, on the list of 30 MPs with lobbying interests outside Parliament. And they are used to topping up their salary. Their ministerial days are over for most part, and there's a real sort of cultural divide in the Conservative Party. So if Starmer's got any sense, he will try and wiggle his fingers in these open sores on the Tory benches.
And I suppose the other thing is that if you're a new MP in a marginal seat, you probably consider being an MP a full-time job, whereas if you're an old MP in a safe Tory seat, you probably do have a bit more time around the edges to do some extra work. Exactly.
These new MPs show every sign of wanting to represent their constituents rather than climb the greasy pole. Some of them are surprised to be there at all. A lot of them are earning more money than when they were in jobs before Parliament. And they don't buy this argument that 82 grand isn't enough.
OK, then, brace yourselves. It's likely to be a lively one, this, I think. Let's kick off then. It's PMQs Unpacked. We pause the action live from the House of Commons. This is question number one from Keir Starmer.
The leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Trust matters, and after the last fortnight, the Prime Minister's got a lot of work to do. A central plank in this government's promise to the north of England is a Crossrail of the North, with at least an entirely new high-speed rail line between Manchester and Leeds. A Crossrail for the north, an entirely new line. That is the promise. It's already been made. So I don't want the Prime Minister fobbing off the House about waiting till tomorrow. He can say today, will he stick by that promise, yes or no?
Prime Minister.
He should wait and see what is going to be announced tomorrow, because we will produce a fantastic integrated rail plan. I'm not going to spoil it for them, Mr. Speaker. Why would I? We're going to produce a fantastic...
Order. I expect the front bench to behave better than what it is doing in the moment. If you don't want to listen to the answer, let me know now. I do, and I cannot hear when you all shout together.
That's Lindsay Hoyle ticking off the Labour front bench.
I expect better politics from both sides. Let's show a little bit more decorum than we're seeing at the moment. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, when we produce our integrated rail plan tomorrow, people across the House and across the country will see what we are doing to cut journey times, to make life easier and better for people in the North East, in the North West, in the Midlands, across the whole of the north of the country. Mr. Speaker, with the biggest programme of investment in rail for a century, Mr. Speaker, for a century. And what we are doing, Mr. Speaker, is we are giving people in those communities the same access to commuter-type services that people in the southeast of this country have felt entitled to for more than a century. And that is going to be levelling up across the whole of the UK, Mr. Speaker.
OK, let's jump in there. Boris Johnson sounding a bit croaky. and also slightly wrong-footed that Keir Starmer is asking about.
Well, nearly as wrong-footed as us, in fact.
Shh, we'll take all that out of the
Drawing a
edit.
discreet veil over that. Yes, so he's a bit croaky. I think he made a comment yesterday about how his boy Wilfred has gone into into nursery, and that does tend to lead to a series of germs taking themselves home, and he's got a bit of he's a bit under the weather, I think.
I thought that Keir Starmer kicked off by saying trust matters, and I suspect what we're going to see is him sort of building an argument on, rather than just the Westminster village story about MPs and second jobs. Actually, if you're living in the north, you were told there were going to be some new rail lines. You thought, well, I like the sound of that. I'm going to vote for that. And now you're about to find out you're not going to get it.
Yeah, and this is a classic case of government sort of pre-briefing stuff and leaks happening and ruining announcements. And, what's caught the attention out of this integrated rail plan, which is launched tomorrow, is that the eastern branch of HS2 is being scrapped, and it doesn't sound like the big east-west sort of crossrail line is going to happen in quite the form that they said. Now, if you talk to people in government, they will tell you actually what's going to happen is that the vast majority of people are going to benefit from shorter commuting times. There's a figure that came up in Cabinet last week where apparently pretty well 2/3 of people in Europe have a 30-minute commute, and it's about 1/3 of people in the north of England, and they want to sort of level that up, to coin a phrase. But, what are people focused on, including those Red Wall MPs we were talking about on his own benches? It looks like a broken promise. And they've not got ahead of it. They've not sort of announced the good news first. It's the bad news that's dribbling out. And, their argument about commuter times and it all being wonderful and 10 billion quid being spent is going to have to wait for tomorrow. So he's on the back foot.
And presumably the tactic of doing it on a Thursday is you put it beyond PMQs, so you haven't got the details. So you do it at the end of the week and then everyone leaves. The trouble with that is if it leaks to the Sunday papers, you then have this 4-day window of nothing.
Wait till Thursday.
And the scrapping of the HS2, the eastern leg of HS2 between the Midlands and Leeds, could make journeys longer by 20 minutes. It's quite a long time if that is your commute. Well, let's go back. Boris Johnson really seemed to have an answer, except wait for tomorrow. So let's see what Keir Starmer does with question number 2.
Keir Starmer.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that was a lot of words, but it wasn't a yes. So that's one important promise to the North that he won't stand by. Let's look at another. In February this year, the Prime Minister told this House, I can certainly confirm that we are going to develop the eastern leg as well as the whole of HS2. The whole of HS2. A new high-speed line running continuously, no gaps, between Birmingham and Leeds. So will the Prime Minister confirm that he stands by that promise?
Prime Minister.
I'm afraid the right honourable gentleman is in danger of getting hoisted on his own petard, Mr. Speaker. He needs to wait and see what we announce tomorrow, because I think he will find that the people of the North East, of the North West, the people of Leeds, the people of Nottingham, the people of Sheffield, and the people of the whole of the North West and the North East of this country will benefit massively.
Any other northern towns and cities?
Keir Starmer.
I think we'll just carry on, Keir Starmer. Let him ask another go.
Speaker, a lot of words, but not a yes. So that's 2 important promises to the North that he won't stand by. No wonder trust in the Prime Minister is at an all-time low. Across the country and belatedly across this House, there is now agreement that Owen Paterson broke the rules and that the government should not have tried to let him off the hook. Many members opposite have apologised. The Business Secretary has apologised for his part. The Leader of the House has apologised for his part. But they were following the Prime Minister's lead. So will he do the decent thing and just say sorry for trying to give the green light to corruption?
OK, let's just jump in. Just to give the background to that. The Business Secretary is Kwasi Kwarteng, who called for the Standards Commissioner, Catherine Stone, to consider her position, something he's now apologised for. The Leader of the House is Jacob Rees-Mogg, who, on his own podcast, admitted he'd made a bit of a hash of things, and it was probably a mistake to try and overturn Owen Paterson's punishment. What I don't know if you are. I think you are a betting man, Tim. How much did you bet on Boris Johnson now standing up and apologising?
I think it's fairly low, by which you would get decent odds. He did an appearance in what was supposed to be an away day that ended up being in Downing Street last week, and he admitted it was an unforced error in front of his ministers, which they took to be an admission of guilt. But he didn't quite apologise. I understand he feels bad about the position he put some of his staff in, but he's not someone who makes public apologies very often. It's just not his style. He thinks that if you apologise for anything, you open the door to apologising for everything, and he just thinks that's a bad look politically.
Well, let's see how he does respond then to Keir Starmer's suggestion that he might like to apologise.
Mr. Speaker, yes, as I've said before, it certainly was a mistake to conflate the case of an individual member, no matter how sad, with the point of principle at stake. And we do need a cross-party approach on an appeals process. We also need, Mr. Speaker, a cross-party approach on the way forward, and that's why we've tabled the proposals that we have to take forward the report of the Independent Committee for Standards in Public Life of 2018 with those two key principles that everybody in this House should focus primarily and above all on their job here in this House, and secondly, that no one should exploit their position in order to advance the commercial interests of anybody else. That's our position, Mr. Speaker. We want to take forward those reforms. In the meantime, perhaps he could clear up from his proposals, whether he would continue to be able to take money as he did from Mishcon de Rea and other legal firms.
Let's hear Lindsay Hoyle.
Prime Minister, as you know, and I do remind you, it's Prime Minister's questions, not Leader of the Opposition's questions.
Well, there we are. It's notable, Tim Shipman, that the House of Commons chamber, particularly on the Tory side, is not exactly packed to the rafters. No, and normally this is a sort of opportunity to turn up and show your support and make as much noise as possible, and it's odd, to say the least. Harry Cole from The Sun, I think, is in the press gallery. He can spot at least 30 empty seats, which actually probably means, by the way, you probably fit 60 people in there. By the way, they have to squeeze in at PMQs. Yeah. And there's quite a lot of green, which it's not a ringing endorsement of the Prime Minister today. No, it certainly isn't. And I can't really ever recall it in non-COVID sort of concerned times ever being anything other than packed to the rafters with people standing in the corridors and up by the doors. And this defence of, Keir Starmer was at it as well, taking money from a legal firm. Does that really work? I suppose in the end it just makes everyone dislike all politicians. Yeah, I think it works to the degree that you look at a lot of polling, and I did a focus group last Thursday evening, and there's certainly a sense, yes, the Tories might be worse affected by this, but but you ask people, and the biggest response is they're both as bad as each other, and in a sense that's the best sort of hope for the Tories to drag Labour into it as well. And there are some questions about what Starmer's been doing. He appeared to be trying to get an extra job with a law firm after Labour themselves had said they would ban such things, and he's got a load of payments that he's never acknowledged where they came from. And, and we've even seen, Ed Davey, the Lib Dem leader, last week was defending his position, and now I think, said he's going to give up the consultancy work that he was doing. Yeah, I think with him, he has always claimed that money goes into a trust for his disabled son to sort of look after him after they've gone. But, yeah, for the public, on the face of it, it's still the same process, isn't it? Yeah, it's still the same. But it goes back to, you can't, as Boris Johnson admitted there with the Owen Paterson case, you can't make exceptions just because the particular situation is sad. Well, let's go back to the House of Commons as well. Question number 4.
Keir Starmer.
That's not an apology. Everybody else has apologised for him, but he won't apologise for himself. A coward, not a leader. Weeks defending corruption. Yesterday, a screeching last-minute U-turn to avoid defeat on Labour's plan to ban MPs from dodgy second contracts. But waving one white flag won't be enough to restore trust. And there are plenty of opposition days to come. And we will not let the Prime Minister water down the proposals or pretend that it's job done. We still haven't shut the door on the revolving door where ministers are regulating a company 1 minute and working for them the next. There are plenty of cases that still stain this House. There are 2 simple steps to sorting it out: proper independence and powers for the Business Appointments Committee and banning these job swaps. Will the Prime Minister take those steps?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've called, as you know, and indeed you have called, Mr. Speaker, for a cross-party approach to this. And what I think we need, to do is to work together on the basis of the independent report by the Committee of Standards in Public Life to take things forward and indeed to address the appeals process. But what I think everybody can see, Mr. Speaker, is that in a classic, lawyerly way, the Right Honourable Gentleman is now trying to prosecute others for exactly the course of action that he took himself. And what I think the nation wants to know, because his register is incomplete, who paid Mishcon de Rea and who paid the 25,000? Who's paying him for his... Just a minute.
Prime Minister, I don't want to fall out about it. I've made it very clear. It is Prime Minister's questions. It's not for the opposition to answer your question. Whether we like it or not, those are the rules of the game that we're all into, and we play by the rules, don't we? And we respect this House, so let's respect the House. Keir Starmer.
There we are. Another tip. We play by the rules, don't we?
The Speaker doing satire now.
This is well. Let's start at the beginning there with Keir Starmer. A coward, not a leader. That's clearly the soundbite that he wanted, which he then followed up with weeks of not dealing with corruption, which is, do you think was that an accidental or deliberate echo of Tony Blair?
Week. Yeah, which Blair said about John Major, I think, didn't he? There's something slightly tinny about Starmer sort of hurling around insults. It doesn't feel natural for him. But, you know, that's a line. I'm not sure it's a particularly effective line. Given that he's trying to paint Boris Johnson as a sort of handmaid of corruption, and then he's calling him a coward. I mean, it doesn't quite work.
Is that because you can't say cook in the House of Commons?
That may be.
Maybe they've been through a whole list of words beginning with C. And coward was the one they thought they could get away with.
And then Johnson hits back with his, this is a classic lawyerly response, and that obviously comes up in Tory, polling that Starmer's a sort of
it's all a bit summer of last year, isn't it?
It does have a slight,
and actually, crucially, I mean, because he's not allowed to answer the question, in Keir Starmer's, he didn't actually do it, did he? He was having conversations about taking a job.
Yeah, that's right. And he then ended up not taking the job. There's a dispute over whether he didn't do it because Jeremy Corbyn told him not to, or whether he decided himself not to. The one sort of outstanding thing with Starmer is that there's a decent sum of money that he's claimed for giving legal advice, and we don't know who he was giving that legal advice to. It wasn't Mishcon de Rea, which is the law firm that Boris Johnson's talking about. The Labour Party say that's for reasons of client confidentiality.
Yeah. Well, let's have another go then. This is Keir Starmer. Question number 5 on PMQs Unpacked.
Mr. Speaker, that newfound commitment to upholding standards didn't last long. Mr. Speaker, here's the difference. When somebody in my party misbehaves, I kick them out.
He's also referring to Jeremy Corbyn there.
Mr. And I don't think... Look, this is not good. We lost a dear friend. I want to show that this House has learnt from it. I don't want each other to be shouted down. I want questions to be respected. I expect the public to actually be able to hear the questions and the answers, because I'm struggling in this chair. I need no more. Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, when somebody in my party misbehaves, I kick them out. When somebody in his party misbehaves, he tries to get them off the hook. I lead, he covers up. Let's try another issue. We know that Owen Paterson was a paid lobbyist for Randox. We know that he sat in on a call between Randox and the minister responsible for handling health contracts. We know that Randox has been awarded government contracts worth almost £600 million without competition or tender. Against that backdrop, the public are concerned that taxpayers' money may have been influenced by paid lobbying. There's only one way to get to the bottom of this: a full, transparent investigation. If he votes for Labour's motion this afternoon, that investigation can start. Will he vote for it, or will he vote for another cover-up?
Prime Minister!
I'm very happy to publish all the details of the Randolph's contracts, which have been investigated by the National Audit Office already. We're talking of cover-ups. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, but we still have not heard why the Honourable Gentleman will not tell...
Order. Prime Minister, sit down. Prime Minister, I'm not going to be challenged. You may be the Prime Minister of this country, but in this House, I'm in charge, and we're going to carry on. End of that.
Wowzers.
Well, I mean, even John Bercow often didn't quite go that far.
Yeah, I'm the king is quite a...
And actually, I think that was interesting because in the previous one, Johnson was trying to ask Starmer questions about it. In that, he was simply making a statement about it.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably a material difference there.
He might have got around. He might have got away with it if it was the other way round. If
if he'd stated it previously, he probably would have got away with it.
This, that, and the other.
But having been told off once, he's now been properly slapped down. You'd have to say Lindsay Hoyle's keeping him in line a little bit better than Keir Starmer today.
It also, because at various times the relationship between Lindsay Hoyle and Number 10 has been up and down. I think it's fair to say it's not in a good place right now, not least because, Lindsay Hoyle is particularly furious about this mess over the Standards Commissioner, the Owen Paterson case, try to rewrite, essentially the government trying to rewrite the rules of the House of Commons without consulting the House of Commons.
Yes.
And getting cross-party consensus. That's the sort of thing that gets him very
Yeah, and he was put in, but with a fair number of Tory votes who didn't like what John Bercow got up to during the Brexit battles. And, they'll be a little bit dismayed that Lindsay Hoyle is showing quite such a degree of spine. But he's certainly someone who's got views and he's not frightened to let people know what they are.
And on Keir Starmer, if we weren't sure if weeks was a deliberate Blair echo, we then got I lead my party, he covers up, which was also...
yeah, Blair said I lead my party, he follows his. So there's a sort of...
Somebody's been watching the Blair Brown documentary, I think possibly.
They might have been.
And they've absorbed it slightly.
This is like geek jazz, isn't it? Political...
The interesting thing is, although the Labour Party really cheered when Lindsay Hoyle ticked Boris Johnson off, in terms of Keir Starmer trying to land his key message... He got interrupted, didn't he? So he had to sort of redo it.
There was some. I felt that when Starmer was landing what he felt were big, heavy blows, he wasn't getting that much sort of cheering.
When he did, when somebody in my party misbehaves, I kicked them out. That got a big cheer. And then,
Lindsay Hoyle get to the payoff.
Yeah, then Lindsay Hoyle interrupted. So for the purposes of his TV clip, he then had to repeat it, and the Labour lot forgot to cheer the second time. There was when somebody in my party misbehaves, I kick them out. He tries to get them off the hook.
There was one tiny bit of news in there. There wasn't. Boris Johnson said he was prepared to publish the details of the Randolph's deal. They'll now be trying to hold him to that in the days ahead, I suspect. And,
well, as we know, Boris Johnson's a man of his word, so that will definitely happen. Let's go back to the House of Commons. Keir Starmer, question number 6.
Mr. Speaker, I think the Prime Minister just said he's happy to publish all the Randolph's papers in relation to these contracts, so we'll take that and we'll pursue it. And I remind the Prime Minister, when I was Director of Public Prosecutions, I prosecuted MPs who broke the rules. He has been investigated by every organisation he's ever been elected to. That's the difference. Billions of pounds of taxpayers' money handed to their mates and donors. Tory MPs getting rich by working as lobbyists, one not even bothering to turn up because he's in the Caribbean advising tax havens. And the Prime Minister somehow expects us to believe that he's the man to clean up Westminster. He led his troops through the sewers to cover up corruption, and he can't even say sorry. The truth is that beneath the bluster, he still thinks it's one rule for him and another for his mates. At the same time as his government are engulfed in sleaze, they're rowing back on the promises they made to the north. And it's working people who are paying the price. Is it any wonder that people are beginning to think that the joke isn't funny anymore.
Mr. Speaker, it is plain from listening to the right honourable gentleman that he seeks to criticise this government while refusing to explain his own position. And you've ruled on that, Mr. Speaker. You've ruled on that, Mr. Speaker, and I hear you. But his own misconduct, Mr. Speaker, is absolutely clear to everybody.
Puns go, that's pretty niche.
Is absolutely clear. And meantime, Mr. Speaker, we will get on a cross-party basis. We will get on a cross-party basis with taking forward the business that I've outlined, and we will get on with the business of this government, which is leading the country out of the pandemic.
Order. Prime Minister, I'm struggling to hear, and if it's correct what I've said, it was about Leader of the Opposition and misconduct. We can't or cannot accuse somebody of misconduct. Now, I may, and just before the Leader of the House gives me an answer, all I'm trying to say, I cannot hear. If it was said, I want it withdrawn. If it wasn't, I will accept it. I'm just a moment.
We're now having a row about a
Prime
pun.
Minister,
Mr. Speaker, I referred to the right honourable gentleman's misconduct, because that is what he is guilty of. That is what he is guilty of.
Lindsay Hoyle is now taking the advice of the clerks as to whether or not that is in order.
Order. I don't think this has done this House any good today. I'll be quite honest. I think it's been ill-tempered. I think it shows the public that this House has not learned from the other week. I need this House to gain respect, but it starts by individuals showing respect to each other. Right, let's go.
Blimey. So, I mean, I'd say the person who's had the best morning is probably Lindsay Hoyle.
I think he's probably edged it, hasn't he? I mean, Starmer finished quite well there. There was quite a good sort of peroration, wasn't there? And saying the joke's not funny anymore is certainly something that comes out in some of the focus groups I've been listening to, that people who hoped Boris Johnson would sort of deliver for them and thinking he still kept up his comedy act. And then, of course, bravura of the man to then reply with a pun, which he then had to explain and stick to, and it was nearly the subject of a ruling. So, not the most edifying display.
No,
I just wonder whether Starmer would have been better carrying on where he started off. And if you're all about winning back these seats in the north, I mean, just hammer him on, everything,
And actually, there was a really successful PMQs actually might have been to have done trains for question number one, worked your way through a series of broken policy promises, wind up with sleaze so he can't get to it until later, and then sort of hammer him at the end. Ian Dale, no fan former Conservative candidate. Obviously, I think he's on another radio station if it's still going. He's just tweeted, said, I've no hesitation saying that Boris Johnson's performance in the House today at PMQs was a disgrace. But it wasn't particularly edifying, was it? At a time when he doesn't really do sort of statesman-like rising above it, admitting that things have gone wrong, and he's determined.
No, his instinct always is to fight and drag the other person into a sort of close clinch, and it's like the boxer who stops the other fella boxing by just sort of grabbing him by the neck and holding him tight. It was a fairly unedifying display. Starmer certainly had the better of the big two. But I wonder whether Lindsay Hoyle sort of saying we play by the rules, don't we, was mocking Boris Johnson a little bit. The most effective line of the lot, really.
Yeah. Well, somebody's texted, when Boris is rattled, the Mr. Speaker count goes through the roof, Jeff. But there's no punctuation. I don't know if that's from Jeff or if they're doing a sort of Soccer Saturday tribute. Someone else saying this is quite a ding-dong in the chamber, says Johnny. The misconduct joke was clever, but it's not going to resonate with the man in the street. I think we can probably agree with that.
Most definitely.
And the Speaker may have views, but is he allowed to be so vehement? Bring back John Bercow, said Andrea Wood. I mean, that's a view. We will take a look at the best of the rest to see if the backbench contributions were any better after we get some news and sport from Rachel Jewell.